Few things are for sure in this life, but this is. If we live for any substantial amount of time, we will encounter grief due to the loss of a loved one. Not something any of us ever want, and we all handle it differently. This podcast is to feature those who have done purposeful and meaningful things through their grief. These people featured on here are normal folks, just like you and me, who were thrust into a place they never wanted to be in their lives. A painful place. As they moved through their pain, they realized that something worthwhile, something for the greater good, could come out of the unthinkable. I'm sure that none of them would ever consider themselves to be a hero, but when I searched the definition of the word hero, I found this: a person who is admired or idolized for courage, outstanding achievements, or noble qualities. And that fit. And so it's my privilege to bring you the remarkable stories of these heroes in grief. Hi, everyone. This is Tom, your host for the Heroes in Grief podcast, and the response has been incredible so far, and I want to thank you for that. It's getting out to people, and they're letting us know that it's helping them, and that is what it's all about. I want to make you aware of a way that you can support this podcast without having to spend 1 cent, and that is through affiliate marketing. I've set up affiliate marketing for online shopping. If you do online shopping, then I have links to all the major retailers, most of them anyways, and I can provide them for you so that when you buy online through those links, you'll help support the podcast through the percentages that we get. It doesn't cost you anything more. You just shop like you regularly would on the sites that you love. It's very easy. All you have to do is shop. And that's it. Just let me know the links to the places that you want to shop at, and I will provide the affiliate links so that you can do it. If you want more information on this, you can go to heroesingrief.com. It takes you to the Linktree page where a video explains it in a little more detail. But you can always email me at tom@heroesingrief.com, and I can answer questions for you. But you can support the podcast that way, and it's very easy, very simple, and it doesn't cost you a cent. Isn't that great? Thank you. Now here's today's episode. Hello, everyone. Tom Bender here with the Heroes in Grief podcast. Thank you, everybody, for listening today. And today is kind of a unique one because all you're going to have is me here today. So I decided it was finally time to tell my story and what's been happening in the midst of all of that. So kind of what brought this podcast on and other things. So just going to give my story here and talk about some other things as well, too. Bring you up to date on some stuff that's happening with me. So the summer's been crazy, as you've heard in some of the podcasts, that, things just get busy in the summer. So I've been flying by the seat of my pants a lot of weeks just to get guests on and things, but people have been great about that, and that's been awesome. So, and you guys have been great listening, too. I really appreciate it. I started this all with no expectations whatsoever. I still have none. If the universe decides to take this to other places, then they will. And that's okay with me. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that kind of thing as we go too. So the story, my story on how this all began and everything and what happened with my life, I'm going to go back a little bit. I live in Niagara Falls, New York with Judy, my fiance girlfriend. We've been here for 15 years and so together for 15 years too. And so living our life and just kind of cruising along. She has 3 sons, 3 older sons, all in their 20s. And so most of them are out of the house. Anthony's still here. Anthony is 23 now, and he's still in the household. So it's been us here, and we had our dogs. We had 3 dogs at the time. And a couple of years ago, what happened, I was married before, I was married for 14 years, got divorced. That happened way back in like 2008. And we had 2 children. We had Jeff, first of all, we had Katie. Katie was my ex-wife's daughter, and I adopted her. I had been with her since she was about 5 months old. So I actually adopted her. So Katie's my daughter. And then we had Jeff, and Jeff was 2 years away from Katie. Katie's older. And so went through life there. Then when we got divorced, of course, we're split up, and life kind of goes its separate ways. And what happened was excuse me. Katie grew up and she's kind of on her own and living on her own and things. And Jeff was living with my ex for a while, and out in a rural town south of Buffalo here, and Niagara Falls, where I live. And so Jeff got involved in drugs and was kind of out on his own for a while. And I'd get texts from my ex-wife, and she'd say, "I'm really scared. I'm going to hear that Jeff is dead," because she knew he was involved in quite a bit. Jeff had distanced himself from me, and come to find out later that there was really no cause for that. It was Jeff himself that just didn't want me to be involved in his life while he was doing these things, I guess. So what happened was, I'd get these texts and all this stuff. And so Jeff was pretty bad into things. And we heard that he's just living kind of from house to house and this type of thing. And so we really didn't know what was going on. And eventually, I guess they got him together and they had him living with Amy's, that's my ex-wife's name, her sister and her husband and kids. So Jeff was living there, and I guess it just kind of reached the time for him to have to leave there for whatever reason. And so they kept encouraging him, get a hold of your dad, get a hold of your dad. And I hadn't heard from Jeff in about 5 years. I kept texting him. I was actually paying for his phone. So I kept texting him and, just let him know I'm there. And everybody kept telling me he'll come around. And frankly, I doubted that. And, it was really hurtful. Of course, every day you think about it. And, so I guess they were saying behind the scenes, because they're kind of helpless in his situation. And so my ex and her family and things were saying, get a hold of your dad. They kept telling him this, and eventually he did. And he decided to come. He reached out to me actually on Facebook. It's just, "Hey, Dad," or something out of the blue. And of course, I was so happy to hear from him. And kind of explained that he was looking to get out of the scene he was in. And so I discussed this with Judy, my girlfriend, fiance here. And of course, like, our household was set, we're just kind of hanging out and living our life and doing our things. And so Jeff wanted to come talk to us about possibly coming here. And frankly, I didn't know, nor did Judy, what Jeff could actually say to make us comfortable with that. Because, as you know, as much as you want to help and want to get into that, you want to help your son, it's so difficult to think about taking all that on. Anyone who's been through an addiction situation knows the depths of what I'm talking about. Very difficult to handle that. And, the question frankly comes, do you want to bring this into your life? Do you want to tackle this? And of course, anybody would say, it's your child. Of course you have to. And that was what I wanted to do. I just didn't know what he could say or what would make us comfortable with that, because I'm sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to be looking after him. And, going through his room, whatever, all these crazy things. And, when Jeff came here, I still picture the scene. We're sitting out in our garage. We have a made up garage, very beautiful, sectional couch there and everything. And Judy and I sat across from Jeff, and I can't remember the exact words, but Jeff was very humble and very revealing about everything that he had been doing. And so he did make us comfortable in whatever way that was. I can't tell you, like I said, exactly what that was, but we believed him. We believed he wanted to get out of it. He was honest about what he was doing, and he seemed sincere. And so we agreed that he could come live here, and he did. And so he was with us for 2.5 years, and he got a great job. Eventually got a job at a construction company here. It's a high-end construction company. He used to show me some of the jobs they were doing, and he was very good at what he did. He worked at a high-end pool company before that too, where they built pools for people. And so he had some talents for sure in that regard. And so he worked for that country or that contracting company and moved up the ladder very quick. They were trusting him with jobs like a foreman, but he really wasn't a foreman yet. And he had only been there, a year and a half, 2 years when that started happening. So they liked him a lot there. He was a dedicated worker. It always amazed me because you think of the younger generation like being lazy and all these things, and he got up every single day, went to work, and he felt good about himself and doing that for sure. Worked his way all the way up and saved money. We didn't charge him rent here. We said, you know, get off the snide here. When he came, I said, Jeff, let's move forward from here. And that was about our relationship and everything else. I didn't care about the time that we had lost. I said, let's move up, let's move on from here, and let's not even go there. So we didn't. And he said, Dad, it wasn't you, it was just me. And so that made me comfortable, of course. But so we just move forward. I said, Jeff, it may seem very hard right now, but you can get out of this. And it's going to be a long road, hard road, but you just start moving forward from here and moving positively forward. And I talked about some of my past. I was, very bad with money and bad financial situations in the past and everything. So I could relate to that. And so Jeff, like I said, was doing very well. He was pretty much a homebody. He hung out at home. He'd come home after work and sit here and drink a couple beers or something and hang out at home. And if he did go out, he went out with Judy and I. So we were three peas in a pod for a long time. Excuse me. And a lot of fun. We have like a bar dart board out in our garage, and we'd hang out there and play darts a lot and do those kind of things. So, and I treasured the time with him because of the time that we hadn't been together. So I did things like when I'd come back from working, I was a full-time musician. I'll fill you in on that right now. I was a full-time musician for 15 years before Jeff passed, and I would work during the weekdays. I was doing nursing homes and care centers. And in our area, they all have budgets for that. So they're hour-long shows. I did a lot of them. I played over 50 facilities here locally, and it became a very good business for me. And I'd play clubs and things at night with the bands I was in or solo shows. So I did that kind of thing for the 15 years before Jeff passed. And so I was doing that and get home during the day, and he'd get home from work, and I'd always go in the living room and sit with him and catch up on the day or whatever it was. And we talk about sports and all different kinds of things. So it was good quality time. I did it on purpose because of the time we had lost, and I treasured what we had. And I'd get up with him every morning too. I'm an early riser, and so I'd get up with him. He had to be to work like 7, I think. So I was up at 6, and then, he'd come down 20 after 6:30, something like that, and leave in about 10, 15 minutes. We'd have coffee together every morning and talk about things. And then, he'd be off and I'd be off on my day. So that's what happened the day that he passed. And what that was, it was a Wednesday night the day before, and we'd order out food at times. And so we got Chinese food that night, and Judy and I and Jeff sat it and we ate it in the kitchen. And then Judy and I went up, which is kind of odd, rarity for us at that time anyways. We went up at about 8:00 and went to go watch a movie. And we told Jeff, we're going up. He was in the living room, and he usually goes up 9:30, 10:00, something like that. He'd go up because he got up early. And we heard him go upstairs while we were in the bedroom. And he lived on the 3rd floor with Anthony, Judy's son. And we heard him go up that night. And, it was just a normal night. The next morning, I got up early, of course. And it was wintertime. He passed on February 23rd of 2023. So 2/23/23. And what happened that morning was I got up and there was kind of an ice storm here. So weather wise. And so I thought, some days when there was bad weather, they didn't work. So I texted him and I just said, no work with a question mark. And I was downstairs, got my coffee together and everything. And of course I didn't get a response from him. And then I got ready, did a few things, got ready to go to the gym that morning. And when I got ready, I was just about ready to go, and I thought I just got to go up and check on him, and I did, and that's when I found him. So horrific, of course. It's brutal. It's the worst thing you can imagine. It's as bad as you can imagine and worse. And I was out of control, um, totally out of control. I just kept screaming, "What am I going to do? What am I going to do?" And of course, Judy and Anthony both observing this too. So keep them in your positive thoughts and prayers. It's something we'll always live with, of course. But so that occurred, and on from that, we'll go from that day. I just want to say one thing about that situation. If any of you out there have encountered that traumatic sight and scene that creeps up in your mind all the time, that vision of that time. If that happens for you, I immediately got involved, and I'll forward onto this too, that I immediately knew that I needed help. So I work well with online things like this. And so I found David Kessler, who's a world renowned grief expert. And I will have links to a lot of the stuff I'm talking about in this podcast too. But found David Kessler. I don't know how, just searching online, I guess, or whatever. And he has an online grief group that he started during COVID. They meet like 4 times a week, actually, in different ways. But you can go online 4 times in a week and just be with other people working through your grief, which was great. But one of the things he said at that time, and he actually lost his son too. He was a grief expert for a long time. He witnessed the first mass shooting in the United States when he was a kid, and so he had become a grief expert. And he lost his son in 2016 to fentanyl. Jeff passed from fentanyl as well, and so he lost his son, so he understands from that aspect. But he said, when you see that scene, you want the long-term goal in grief is to remember with more love than pain, is what he says. And that is what you want to try to accomplish. And so I remember very particularly early on, when after this had happened, Anthony, Judy's son, played volleyball at a college here. And so we went to go watch a volleyball game. And this is, I don't know, a few months after Jeff passed. Obviously, he passed in February. So this is in the fall season. So it wasn't too long, not even 6 months. And I remember sitting at the volleyball game, and all of a sudden that picture of what happened that morning came up in my mind while I'm sitting there enjoying it with a couple other friends and Judy. And I thought, how grief is so strange. And I recently just heard somebody explain it. It's like a jack in the box. It just pops up and comes, and different aspects of it come that way. So that's the way this happened. And I'm just sitting there and I'm shaking my head like, I'm watching a volleyball game, trying to enjoy myself here. And that vision comes up. And what Kessler said is, what you want to do at that time is remember, first of all, that the worst thing that could possibly happen has already happened. So it can't be worse than that. And then to try and replace the vision, the thoughts you have with better things. So very simply, I just said, Jeff, I love you and I miss you. And then I started thinking about positive things that I had done with Jeff, and funny things. And, you try to just recondition your mind so it works better. And that's been very helpful. I've used it many times, several times. And it's a good way to think about it. So most of all, in this whole podcast thing and everything, I want to give you some tools to use too. So that's what, I'm very happy that I've been given those tools so that I can share them with you. And that's part of what our grief work is. We talked about this before too. Now, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist. I'm not anything like that, but I am a certified grief educator. And I have experience in other ways. I worked at a hospice. I was a spiritual care director at a hospice for 3.5 years. I was a Christian pastor for 15 years. I will qualify that right now by saying, because I'm going to talk a little bit about my spirituality now, that I no longer follow any of the dogma of religion. I am still very spiritual, but in a different way. So I'll talk more about that later. But anyways, you want to help your situation in that. And so that's what you change your mind, and that's the way that works, which is great. So after Jeff passed, immediately in the acute grief time, that immediate time surrounding it, I was in bad shape, of course. I sat pretty much at the dining room table, and everybody, I remember it was like everybody's observing me or something. And I sat there and I drank a lot. I just searched out some of this grief help stuff. I'd sit there with the computer and whatever. And so obviously I wasn't working. I have not done anything with music since this happened, and we'll talk about that in a minute too. But yeah, I was in bad shape, and I never thought about taking my own life or anything like that. But I didn't care about mine. You just reach a point where you're like, I don't care. If I drink and my liver falls off, or falls out, then that's what happens, and I don't care. And that's pretty much where I was. And people were worried about me, very worried, and they should have been, and I'm glad they were. But I really didn't have problems sleeping. I never had problems sleeping. Of course, I'd drink myself to that point most days, but I really didn't have nightmares or problems with sleeping or anything like that. I'm very fortunate in that regard. And then eventually it reached the time to where Judy had to go back to work. She was off for quite a while. And so she had to go back to work, and she was worried about me. And I remember her saying, I just don't know what you're going to do. Like, are you going to sit here all day? And, are you going to go up to Jeff's room and sit in his room? What are you going to do? And I didn't know. But I knew it wasn't as bad as she might have been thinking. So I tried to, give her any comfort in that. I don't know particularly even what I said, but that was that. Time went on a little bit. That's when I started taking the certified grief educator course. We went out and visited her parents in Chicago sometime in that time. And so I got a little purpose there. I was taking the course and I was learning some things, and I was going through my own grief work that Kessler has online, which is good. And so that's how I occupied my time, taking care of myself that way. And it did increasingly or get better as time went on, where I was very dedicated to that. So that was all good. And time moved on, and got through the grief educator course. That ended in June of that year, I think. I was June graduate. So it was about, I don't know how many weeks it was, but pretty extensive. And got done with that. And then she's like, well, what are you going to do? And I still didn't know. I said, well, I'm going to take this. I knew that I'd changed internally. I did know that. And I got a great level of compassion for people. And I just wanted to help people. I learned that love is a huge part of that. My love for people has gone off the charts, for humanity, and wanting to help people. Now, that's not so strange to people who've known me for a long time, because as a pastor, I worked ambulance for 15 years full time. I was in, obviously, the hospice work. So it's not that strange for me to have that desire. It's been part of my life before. Music's always been in my life, but it hasn't been, I was full time for 15 years before this. And so a lot of people around here only know me from music. So it seemed very odd to them that I wasn't doing it or didn't even entertain doing anything back with music. But it didn't seem odd to me. Not at all. In fact, many times in the past years, I've been saying I wanted to scale back because I'm just enjoying life more. I want to do life things. It's great when you play music. And some people ask me, is it like just another job? It is in some ways because, we'd be out on a boat in the daytime or whatever. I use this example all the time. Be out on a boat having fun. And then it's like, crap, I got to go play, and it's fun to play. I can have fun. I can have a few drinks if I want to, whatever, party with people, but it's not the same as being with people and hanging with them. And that's a large part of who I am. So, I wanted to scale back for a long time. So it's not that odd that I didn't mind being out of it. It was actually very kind of comforting actually. But so kind of move forward, and then in that summer is actually the idea for the podcast came way back then. I didn't start it till earlier this year of 2024, but the idea for the podcast came way back then, and that the title came to me and everything. I don't take credit for any of these things. I believe that we're guided by the spirit world, our spirit guides, and that. So it was given to me, and I sensed that that was something I should be doing. But last year, as I crept into it a little bit more, I was like, it's not the right time. It's not the right time. So I had worked for a company here in Niagara Falls in the past a couple times. I was a tour guide here in Niagara Falls. And I also, a few years ago, just drove for that company. I'm a CDL driver, which means I can drive the buses, the passenger buses, not the big coach buses, but the tour type buses. I'm certified to drive for. So I called up Robert, my friend who owns the company there, and he welcomed me back. Was very happy to have me back, and there was always room for drivers there. So I started driving for him. That was the first start. And then I started doing Uber and Lyft, and that's what I've been doing since that time. This is being recorded in September of 2024. So it's been over a year on both those things, and I enjoy it. I like talking to people, and there's a lot that I can share about all that too. But so that's the course that I took and started just going through the winter with that and everything. And we progress on to the early part of this year. And I will go back and say, before Jeff ever passed, my mother passed a couple of years before Jeff. And when my mother died, this is a large part of who I am now. That's why I'm telling this story. When my mom died, she was 95. So I had a great deal of anticipatory grief with her. She wasn't sick for a long time, but she'd come to watch me play when I was in the areas doing the nursing homes and things, and I'd pick her up and she'd come watch me play. And sometimes I'd be singing and I'd be looking at her and I'd thinking, you're not going to be here someday. And how am I going to deal with that? And then she did get sick about the last 10 months of her life. It was pretty difficult. We kept her at home, and our family members, we all rallied together and spent time with her and everything. So there was anticipatory grief of her passing. And I was shocked that when she did, I was very okay through that. And, but it's interesting. The day that she passed at home. We had a hospice bed in her living room, and myself, my brother Jim, and my brother Bob were there early on. Now, me being through hospice and the ambulance stuff, I can tell when someone's getting close to dying. So I had told the whole family, I said, we're getting there. We're very close. And that day, I saw changes and I knew. So we got together at her house pretty early. It was about 6-7 o'clock in the morning at that time. And we're all talking in the kitchen, Jimmy, Bobby, and myself. And Bob says to me, he goes, you know what I've been looking into lately? He goes, near-death experiences. And he started talking about them and all the testimonies of these now. And he said, there's some common things through every one of them. And that's just all I kind of got out of it. Later that day, my mom passed, and she passed at about 6 o'clock in the evening. And this is February. again, February. And so it got dark early at that time. And it's pretty interesting. I'll tell you this story. What happened was my sister had taken my mom on her dream trip to Disney World a couple of years before my mom passed. And it was her treasured, my sister just did a great job in taking her. And so there's all these pictures, and there's a picture with her with Mickey Mouse and all this. And my mom was in a wheelchair and going around there, but so it was a great trip. And my mom was a little kid at heart, absolutely loved it, and so it was very precious. On my mom's kitchen windowsill, she had a bunch of those, probably like 20 or 30 of them, of those, the things you put like on your dashboard, the little plastic things that dance when the sun, they got a little solar panel on them and they dance because of the sun. So she had a bunch of them on her thing, and they'd all click while they're doing the thing, which is pretty funny. The family members be yelling, "Oh, those damn things," like shut them things up. And so she had all those things, and then she had a little Mickey Mouse that was right in the middle of all of them. My mom passed, like I said, at 6:00 at night. It was dark already. And when she passed, a little bit after we got done with our initial grief of everything, I walked into the kitchen and I looked at those, and the only one moving was Mickey Mouse. It was incredible. I called everybody in, look at this. And so it was so cool to experience that. I have that Mickey Mouse. We have it in our living room, and I sometimes work down there. I was working down there with the computer all the time when I was doing music, and every once in a while I'd look up and it would just be like moving just a little bit. And there's no window near it or anything. There's no light. I mean, it needs to have solar source, and so there's no reason it should have been moving. But so it's very cool. I just took it as a hi from mom. Anyways, the near death experience stuff, I talked to Jeff about this stuff. I believe now through searching this stuff out, and I did even before Jeff passed, that our consciousness lives on. I believe that science is starting to find this stuff out now. If you look into, and all I'm going to tell you is search it out for yourself. That's what I did when I went into the near death experience realm. I wanted to go to the top because I'm like, I can listen to these stories forever, but it's not telling me anything. So I looked up the doctors. I looked up the scientists. I wanted to know what's being really said about this stuff. And I couldn't believe what I discovered. Just amazing. These doctors who went against and scientists who went against their whole professions and took ridicule because of what they could not deny, what they found out. So you look into those stories yourself. I'm not sitting here trying to convince you. I don't have to. I'm not trying to recruit for any reason or anything else. You have your own journey. And that's something that somebody related to me recently that is so true. This is not something where I have to sit there like with religion, like I'm trying to get you in the religion or I'm trying to do whatever. No way. It doesn't matter to me. I have my journey. You have yours. So if you're hearing this, there may be a reason you're hearing the information you are. That's all I can say. That's the way I looked at it. So, and I believe that occurs. So anyways, I looked into the near-death experiences, found out some amazing things where they're saying that what's being found out in science now is that science always believed that the brain created consciousness, but because of some of these occurrences and other things, remote viewing, all different kinds of things that have kind of been proven that the brain does not create consciousness. It's more like a radio receiver that receives consciousness. So that means that our consciousness exists outside of our body. And I believe that wholeheartedly. So when we leave this body, we still exist. And that's, as far as I'm concerned, fact. So, you can say, "Oh, Tom, you're just wishful thinking," all these things. And I don't care if you say that about me. I really don't, because I know what I've found out. I know what I've experienced and what I've seen. And anyone who knows me knows that I'm not a bullshitter. I'm not going to sit there and blow smoke up your rear end at all. I'm just telling you what's occurred. So, I was already into this stuff, and Jeff and I would talk about it. And Jeff was a very, very smart kid. He, through high school, he basically didn't go because he was bored. He didn't it didn't do anything for him. And so Jeff used to talk to me about things like quantum physics and that kind of stuff. And sometimes he'd be talking about things and I'd be looking it up on my phone because it's so beyond me. And that's the kind of kid he was, very smart and kind of maybe even outside of this world. Who knows, you know? And so I looked into all that stuff. And that's when Jeff passed. After the initial grief phase, I got into finding out about meditation and things. And so meditation's another word that people are very scared about. If you've prayed, you've meditated. So I prayed a lot when I was in the religious circles. And so meditation, I heard someone, Michael G. Reccia is a guy, and I'm put his links on the show notes here because he has a great course. It's a course on YouTube about meditating and reaching a higher level of consciousness. Excuse me. 15-minute segments, very easy to go through. You take it at your own pace, all that stuff. So I found him. He's a very humble guy. And he recently said that one of his mentors said that meditation is like daydreaming with positive intent. So the whole thing with meditation and what science is finding out is that we're all vibration. We're all energy. So if you have negative energy around you and you foster negative energy, then you are going to be negative and you're going to have negative consequences. If you're positive and you can break that negative energy for one thing, but you also can lead yourself on a positive path. And I'll tell you one way that that's been happening recently for me, and I'm no great meditator or anything. I mean, I might take that 15 minutes and then I've had big times where I haven't meditated at all, but I understand a little bit more about what's called mindfulness. And that's being just in a state of now, like, and you might have heard this before, I'm in the now or whatever, but it really is. When I drive during the day and everything, I'm just focusing on what's happening now. You're focused, you're the people that are around you, whatever, and you're just in that time. I'm not sitting there thinking about politics. I'm not sitting there thinking about all these crazy things, and they're really going out of my mind more and more. And so it takes the place of that, and that's what meditation does for you too. And you can reach a lot of depths with meditation, but it's very simple. It's not a hard thing. Like everybody thinks it's like, you got to turn the lights down, you do all these things. I meditate while I'm walking, I meditate when I'm driving, and you can do all that. It's just a word for something positive that you're doing. So I'll give you some of those links to, that Michael Ray-Chia course. They're like 6 modules of them, and there's like 6 videos in each one, and they're all like 15 minutes. But he teaches you how to better train your mind to reach that state, so you can have a higher vibration level around you. And that's the whole thing. We want a higher vibration level so that we can affect things positively around us. And something that's definitely been happening for me lately since I've been focusing on that. And it's called manifestation, where you kind of create a better situation around you by doing that. And so driving Uber and stuff, right? So I rent a car from Uber. So I do pretty much Uber exclusively. And, I see all these people around where things have gotten so bad with the driving, all these things. And it's much better. It's much worse than it used to be. But as far as what we're making and that kind of stuff. But those people know better than me. I've only been in it for a year, but in the last couple of weeks, when I've really started doing this positive manifestation where I'm like, no, I'm going to create a better positive situation around my life. I'm getting unbelievable days with the fares that I'm making and the best trips and all these things, and perfect trips for me. For instance, I live in Niagara Falls, so I'll take someone from Niagara Falls to the Buffalo Airport, and I'll immediately get a Buffalo Airport back to Niagara Falls. And that happened 3 times today, just stuff like that. And that's way out of the scope of the way things have been going. So I believe that those things can happen. And so again, I'm not here to convince you. I'm just telling you what's happening in my life. The whole thing about the consciousness stuff and all of that is that we believe that, or I believe, I'll just say me, from what I've understood, is that there's a universal consciousness, and that may be God, the light, the source, whatever you want to call it, and that we are all part of that. we are elements. We are taken out of that and we become ourselves on this earth. And now this is getting pretty advanced for some of you, I know. Just look into it. That's all I'll say. But, in a nutshell, we exist outside of this consciousness and we can come back to earth multiple times if we want. Earth is like a school for us because we're trying to raise our soul levels as we go to get closer to that consciousness or that ultimate consciousness, the source. And so we raise our levels and we do that through this earth school that we have. So again, I'm not the best to explain all of that, but I do believe that and understand it. So that takes people to a whole different level of understanding. And I know that if you are new in your grief and those kind of things, don't even bother going there right now. Just take care of yourself. That's all I'm going to tell you to do, because that's way beyond what you want to understand right now and what you should understand. So some people can grasp it right away and if it makes them feel good and all of that, but others, if you're brand new in your grief, it's hurting every day, you're crying, then please just take care of yourself. That is the first and foremost thing. And then as you move on down the line, your brain does open up a little bit to where you can start functioning again. And perhaps you want to look into them at that time. Like I said, it's up to you. I'm not saying religions are wrong. I don't believe in the dogma of religion. The rules and all those things of what you have to be in a religion and you have to join this group or join that group. I don't believe that at all anymore. So, don't, and I don't want to be mean about this, but, and I did this too when I was a pastor. I'd quote the Bible because most Christians believe that the Bible was inspired by God and it's preserved by God and all these things. I just don't believe that anymore. So Bible verses don't mean anything to me. I mean, they're good guidelines, all these things. But if God wants to guide me, he's going to guide me himself, and he will through my spirit guides or whatever that may be. So the Bible verses don't mean anything to me. And that's as far as, this has to be this way or whatever. It just doesn't, it's not going to affect anybody who doesn't believe that that's the inerrant word of God. So, just for my Christian friends, think about that, because if someone doesn't believe that about the Bible, then you quoting the Bible to them doesn't mean anything to them. So it just makes you look more kind of whatever, toward them, judgmental. That's the big word, judgmental. So anyways, out of that stuff, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Maybe someday I'll have some people on and we'll talk about the whole religion and thing with all of this now, because I have a lot of people intrigued by that. I do want to tell you about some other things that have gone on and make you aware of some things. I posted some stuff about these things. I got involved in a group called Helping Parents Heal. And it is a group of parents who have lost children. It's worldwide. And if the site is helpingparentsheal.org, tons of resources on that site. It's great. And then, so that was last year sometime. I think I found out about it through Susan Giesman, who is an evidential medium. I think I saw her online, and I think she talked about it because she's involved with the organization. Excuse me. So I think it was found out through her. I don't remember exactly, but anyways, got involved, found out about them, and I didn't get involved with them right away. I just found out about them, had it as a resource. And then sometime, I want to say late last summer, maybe early spring, I found out that they have an offshoot group of that called Helping Fathers Heal. And I always wanted to know about the guys in grief, because when I was on the Kessler sites, we did these, Zoom sessions and everything, and it's 99% women. And I always was like, where are the men? I'd be a man in there with maybe two other guys. There'd be 300 people on the call or 200 people on the call. And I'm like, where are the men and what's going on with them? And so I had a heart for that right away. And then I found out about Helping Fathers Heal, and they have a Zoom session, a Zoom call every Wednesday night that you can go on. I knew about that last year. I might have observed it partially at one time, and then maybe watched one of the replays because there's a Facebook group for the fathers and they put the replays in there. I don't remember exactly, but I didn't get involved with them right away. And then as time progressed over this year and out of the winter, earlier this year, I got on the call and I kept missing it. It's a Wednesday night and I'd be like, damn it, I missed it again. And so it's just one of those things. It wasn't at the top priority list. And so I finally joined them and got into it. And I'm there every week now. And I'm a big part of the group. And it is men talking like men and sharing like men. And it's a safe place for men. And we need that so bad in society. And it's so refreshing to the guys. And we look forward to it. We connect with each other outside of the Wednesday nights. And it is, there's a movement happening. I'm telling you, it's incredible. Anyways, so, and I did go to the Helping Parents Heal conference they had in Phoenix like 4 weekends ago. And I was very fortunate to get into that. It was already sold out by the time I found out about it, but you can get on a waiting list. And I just said, well, if I'm supposed to go, I'll go. And Judy said, go, you should go. So I got on the list, and sure enough, I was there. So incredible. I'll share more about that kind of stuff later because this one's getting up there already. We're almost at 45 minutes, but I wanted to update you all on where I'm at and what's going on. So that's really where this comes from. I'm sure, and I thought about doing this early on, maybe the first podcast, but I'm glad I waited because there's a lot more that, I've progressed and I've changed as I've gone on. So it's better at this point, I think. And I believe that I don't believe in coincidences at all. So many great things happening. I put, you might have seen me post it, but I put a placard on the back of my seats that face the clients while they're in the car. And it's about the podcast. And I say, I was given this to write to. I don't take credit for this at all. But I lost my son to fentanyl. And then I put, I'm okay to talk about it. And I'm so glad that line's in there. I had something on there before on the back of those seats that didn't say that. And I just got the feeling that people were, didn't know, should I say something? Should I not say something? And that kind of stuff. And I'm very good to talk about it, or okay to talk about it. And so I put that on there, and oh my gosh, it spurred so many conversations. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. So many great conversations. And I have a camera in my car, and in the men's group last week, we were talking about that. And I'm like, you know what? I have these recordings if I want them. And they're like, oh my gosh, you should start posting them. You could have like a platform with something like that. And of course I'd ask the people if they wanted to be on it or whatever. And I could even block out their faces if I needed to. Sorry. And it's so funny that it came to me, and I'm like, Karma Cab, like the cash cab or something like that. So who knows? Maybe there's an avenue there. I might explore that. We'll see where it goes. But that was pretty funny. But no, it's so great to talk to people. Yesterday, I had an addict in my car, and she saw the fentanyl thing on there, and she's mostly recovered. Like, she's had 10 years. She goes, I've had some times of falling, and she talked about it pretty openly. And so it's just, I've had so many different avenues, whether it's been grief, whether it's been fentanyl, and got some great things coming up regarding stuff like that. So back to the podcast and what's going on. I'm going to cut it here because I could go on and on and on. But it's nice to get together with you and talk about these things, a little bit more about me. I would encourage you, if you want to ask questions in the Facebook group, or, my email. I have everything down there. And if you go to my Linktree page, I'll put the link to that also in the show notes this time. And so you can ask questions anywhere on there if you want to. And I wish you would. I'd like to get some conversation started about the podcast, maybe things that you need more. If you're seeking something, the ultimate purpose of this is for you, so that you can be encouraged by it. And so maybe you can find some help by it too, because the guests I've had on already and some I have coming up have incredible resources to help you through your grief, and so many diverse ones as well. We had an artist on who did artist renditions along with her book. And we had, just grief helpers and grief workers who would do things in different ways, maybe holistic medicine, maybe diet, these kind of things to help you in your grief. We have people who have written books and started foundations, all different kinds of things to encourage you and also ultimately to help you. That's what we all want to do. I keep talking about the grief circles here. It is so awesome to be in the grief help community. And there's a large community of this, but you wouldn't know it in society because we're still trying to break that societal barrier that, just makes grief so taboo. And I hate it. In fact, I'm going to move forward probably. I felt this coming on too, and I'm definitely going to explore this more. I'm going to put this out there right now. If you want to contact me, or if you know people who may want to contact me, I want to get into doing some speaking engagements and working with organizations, whether it be via Zoom, online, or in person, and helping with their grief situations in their workplaces, in organizations, general knowledge, whatever it might be. So I'm putting that out there now. I'm going to be, and I will put this as a hired speaker in places. So to help with those situations. I had a writer. He was a manager at Walmart, and he was talking about the podcast because he saw it on the seat placard thing. And he goes, oh my gosh, I was telling him about the speaking, my desire to get out speaking. And he said, oh my gosh, we could use that. And I'm like, why? What happened? And he said, we have a coworker. She's been with us for a long time. She goes, her husband has been sick for a long time. And she came home one day and found him hanging. And I'm very sorry if I don't mean to activate anybody if you've been through something like that. And I apologize. But, he goes, she hasn't been right since, and it's been months or whatever, maybe years. And I said, of course she's not, I mean, so he's like, we could use that. And I'm talking to him and I'm saying, yes, for her, but also all your fellow coworkers, because they don't know how to act around her. They don't know how to talk to her. They don't know how to deal with her. And that's what I want to do. I want to help educate people around the situations and in the situation on both sides to help the whole grief situation. Situation. The other thing is, in the grief work circles that I'm networked in, all my other jobs and everything were always competitive, or there's some agenda going on, or all these different things. And the people are just so genuine in this field. And so it's almost like this podcast. I'm just putting it out there. Whatever happens, happens. And I don't sit there and look at all the likes and all these things or how many runs. I mean, I keep tabs of what's happening, but I used to be like just always doing that stuff and taking up all my time. I'm so free with this and so calm, so much at peace that whatever happens, happens. I mean, it's as simple as that. Same with the work stuff, that putting the things out there about. I believe that if that's the route I'm supposed to be taking, then I'm going to succeed. So that's run by the universe, and that's the way I look at everything now. So that's going to happen. And everything in my life, I'm free about that stuff, including death. I don't fear death at all. And I used to. I feared death when I was a pastor, and I was scared of it, really scared. And ever since my understanding of this stuff, I simply am not. It's said through the evidential mediums, through people, that have contact with the spirit world, that it's simply like walking into the next room. We shouldn't fear death at all. We are simply in a different dimension, and that exists around us. They're here. Jeff is here. I'm just not on a plane. That's where I try to meditate more. You raise your vibration level so that possibly you can connect with them in different ways. So, that's the way I look at death too. I'm not scared of it. I'm not scared of my future. I'm not scared of anything because I believe that I'm being in tune with and led by the universe and the way things are supposed to go in my life. So, as hard as that is for some of you to understand and hear, I know that, but that's all right. So, to wrap this up, let's see the podcast. Going to be continuing, of course. Got some great guests coming up, some great situations. I have a database of people actually. So I'm going to try and batch record a bunch of these so I can not have to fight through this every single week. But I'd like to get 20 or some recorded so I could just put them out every week and do that. But please, if you would, I'd like to get some conversations started and things like there's a Facebook group. It's Friends of the Heroes in Grief podcast. You can join that. And it's meant to be a discussion group, really, not just a promotional group of what I'm doing. And I hope that increases. I'm on Instagram under Heroes in Grief. There's a YouTube page. I want to tell you about YouTube. I just haven't had time to edit the video portions, like the video podcasts of this. So that's why it's just coming out in audio, but you've been listening to that too. And I appreciate it. I will get to them eventually when I'll start putting them out in video again too, because some people want to see who these people are and everything. And it'll kind of, get those older ones, the first ones that I did back out there again. And there's important topics and things in those that people need to listen to. So I'll get those out there too. Any help from you guys, I'd appreciate it. Anything that you think, I could be doing or doing better or whatever it is, don't be afraid to contact me. I'd love to hear about those things. And also, if you feel led, I got to put this out there because I do have some expenses putting this out every month. I'm paying monthly for the distribution. Captivate is the name of it, where I put the podcast on there and it puts it out to all the podcasts like Apple and Spotify and all those. So it gets out to all those, but you just upload it once, but you pay for this platform. So I pay for that monthly. I'm paying for Riverside, which is recording this right now, the software that I use. And I'm just being honest with you. I pay for that. I'm also going to be paying for Descript, which is the video editing platform that I would use for this. I don't sit there and put a ton of money out advertising or anything like that. I don't. Once in a while, I might throw $30 on an Instagram boost post or something, but not really. I'm just letting it happen organically. So there are some costs. And if you go to the Linktree page that I'll post for you, there's a buy a cup of coffee thing, or you can donate, even on a monthly basis if you feel led to do that, those kind of things. I hate asking for money. I hate putting this out there. It sounds so cheesy. I can't stand it, but facts are facts. It's as simple as that. I'm not going to bullshit you. I'm one of the most honest, upfront people in your face type people you will meet. So just so you know that. So there are some costs, and you can do it that way, or you can do it through the affiliate links that I've been talking about. You may have seen that. It's just another cool way of being able to raise some funds. What happens is, if you shop online, I most likely have a link to the store that you shop at, whether it's JCPenney, whether it's Walmart, whether it's, whatever it may be. Any major corporation's probably there. There's thousands of them that I have links to. So if you purchase through that link, nothing different for you, doesn't cost you any more, doesn't do anything more to what you're doing, but it adds a percentage because I'm helping with their advertising. They give a percentage to me on what you buy. And that's as simple as that. It goes to the podcast, and all those funds go to the podcast. They don't go to me. So there's that. If it's Amazon does it different, of course. And so you need to have the product, the actual product page. Send me the link to that page, and I'll send you the link back to the same page, but it has our little catch in there, so we get credit for it. That's all that is. It's not a big deal. It's pretty simple. But if you want to support us, support me, that would be great. That's The only other thing, next week, not sure who I'm going to have on yet. I've got about 5 different people I'm probably going to try to get recorded next week. So I do have someone coming up about pet loss. And so that's going to be fun and interesting. I love our pets, and we've lost 2 dogs actually this year too. So, some of you know too, we've been going through with Judy's son, Anthony. He had what's called an AVM back in May, and it's a arterial venous malformation. And what it is, it's since birth, he's had this in his head. Nobody knew. You have to have an MRI to find it. And what happened is it burst, and he basically had a stroke. So we've been through the whole summer. It's been 4 months of dealing with that. He was in the hospital for 3 months. He's back home now. Still has left side deficits and things, but he's progressing. Thank you for all your thoughts and prayers and everything with that, because we've felt them and it's helped. So keep that going for Anthony. We're still in the midst of all that. It's going to be a long, long, hard road for him too, for him for sure. And us too. I mean, so, that's going on with us. Hard to fit everything in, right? What's happening, but feel free to ask any questions. Send me a note, whatever. Even my telephone's number is on a lot of stuff and things like that. So anything you could, think of helping me with. I keep saying us like we're a big organization. It's me in my room here. This is how we do the podcast. So I want to give you one more thing. If you've listened through this whole thing and people wonder about me and music and everything locally, I have finally made the decision to rejoin a project that I was part of before Jeff passed. And some very good friends. We used to have a band called Skyway, and people loved that band, but we've been together about 14 years or so too, 14, 15 years. And we may have played a handful of times, maybe 10 times ever, but it's a very good band, and people love the stuff that we did music wise. So we formed a Deep Purple tribute band, where we were forming it just before Jeff passed, and I was singing with that band. And so when Jeff passed, naturally, I told them, I said, go on, because we had a big concert scheduled in the summertime here at Gretwood Park. And so I said, get another singer, keep it going, because you guys have done enough work with this, and you got my blessing on that. And they did. And did a great job. It was fantastic. I was at the show. And so afterwards, their singer has now got a voice problem or something too. So he can't continue with them. And they did contact me, and they were very, very gracious with it. And I finally decided, I listened through the music again, and I love the guys that I'm playing with in that band. They're great friends of mine, and we're in it for the right reasons, just to have fun and do it. So they've got a couple more coming up this year, actually, shows, I guess, and at some pretty decent places. And so yesterday, I actually agreed to rejoin them. So that's the first step. I probably never will be back in music the way that it was. But, it's almost better, because I feel like I can do what I want to do now. And that's one of them. So for those of you that have listened all the way through, you got a little nugget there. I talk about nuggets all the time, right? Anyways, so I'm going to let you guys go, because it's an hour. Now we're into an hour. But anyways, I'm not as good as Joe Rogan. But that's another thing about the podcast. I like that approach. I like the organic approach. So I don't sit there and study the people that I'm doing a podcast with. I like to have it be like the initial call with them or something, just finding out about them. I think it's cool. So that's the way I try to take it. Anyways. All right. So thanks for listening today. Again, thank you for supporting the podcast by listening, and whatever else ways that you do. I appreciate it. Sharing it, whatever it might be. It means a lot to me. It's so cool to see that, on a Sunday when I release a podcast, like 22 people listen right away or whatever. It blows my mind, but it's a lot of fun. Anyways, let me know if I can do anything for you, and hope you're getting a lot out of what's happening with all of this. Thanks a lot for listening today, and I'll catch you next time. All right. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Heroes in Grief podcast. If you'd like access to any of the links that we discussed in today's show, you can find them in the show notes. There's also a link there to support the podcast if you care to. And there is an email link for me there. I'd love to hear from you and your ideas about the show or what you thought about the show. You really can help out this podcast to get to more people if you subscribe, rate, or review it in whichever way your platform provides. Each week, Heroes in Grief is released on Sunday, so look for new episodes there. Thank you again for listening to Heroes in Grief.